Hello friends, I am Santosh Ajmera. I work with Ministry of Information and Broadcasting Government of India, and I am also an author of the book Ethics Integrity and Aptitude published by McGraw Hill Publication. Today we are going to learn about the topic of ethics and human action. Why do you think this topic is important? This topic seems easy, but when we will go into details, we'll come to know it's very essential to learn which actions are human actions. For the study of ethics, we all know any action performed by human being is human action, but all those actions did not come under ethical scrutiny. There is a special relationship between human action and ethics. This relationship would be explained in this topic. Ethical principles can be applied only to the actions which are performed by human beings. Ethics are not concerned with actions of animals. Obviously, we are not going to discuss whether any animal action is right or wrong. Further, it is important to know that ethics focus only on people's deliberate human action. The actions which are performed deliberately and not on undeliberate action or actions implemented in ignorance. There are three basic prerequisites for any human action. These prerequisites will only decide whether an action is human action for it to consider under ethical study. These prerequisites are the first one is involvement of knowledge. Action performed should have involvement of knowledge. That is, the individual should be aware of the action he or she is performing. He or she should have the knowledge about the action. The second one is presence of voluntariness. Action should be voluntary, should be performed by the self only from human will. The will is the cause for an action. If suppose person A places a gun in person B's hand and pulls the trigger, it is obvious that the person B will neither control nor cause an action, and therefore the shooting is caused due to the will of a person A. Hence, the drive cannot be considered as voluntary and therefore is not a human action at all, to be considered under the ethical consideration. And the third one is freely done. Free will means that human beings have choices, although some human actions are voluntary in that the actor carries out the action. Not every voluntary action should be free. Every free action is voluntary in that the actor without restraint carried out the action, but not every voluntary action is free. Meaning, while the doer may be the cause of an action, the doer was operating under the conditions such as force or fear that prevented the action from being freely done. The doer was unable to exercise choice. Therefore, the action, although voluntarily done, was not a free action. For example, if suppose person A places a gun on person B's daughter and forces person B to murder person C, in such case, though person B pulls the trigger voluntarily but not under free will. If any of these three conditions is absent, then the action is not human action and therefore is not subject to examination under ethics. Apart from these three criteria, there are other criteria, other factors which make actions non-human and therefore are not subject to scrutiny of ethics. First factor is ignorance. Ignorance is the absence of knowledge or lack of knowledge. An individual can be ignorant of law or ignorant of act. In legal terms, for a public servant, ignorance of law is a myth, given that he or she is expected to know the law once it is promulgated. Whereas in ethics, ignorance of an existing law, though no fault of the doer, does diminish the humanness of an action. However, if the doer violates the law through such ignorance, the action is not a human action and therefore not fit a case for scrutiny vis-a-vis ethics. Ignorance of an act, on the other hand, means that the doer is aware of the law but uncertain or ignorant about the nature of his or her action or the circumstances in which he or she is operating. In such cases, the action is not considered as human action. Second factor is passion. Passions are powerful emotions or appetites springing from the pretense of something perceived as good or evil. They influence humans and usually accompanied by bodily changes. Passions include human appetites such as anger, grief, love, hatred, or greed. Some passions precede an act of will and cause the will to act. The validity of such human actions depends on the level of these deliberate passions. On the other hand, if the passion is aroused deliberately, the present elements of free will and voluntariness make it a human's action subject to scrutiny vis-a-vis ethics. One such example would be a person who deliberately causes herself to become enraged and as a result kills another person. In this case, the killing is voluntary in the cause, but the doer is guilty to the extent of the force of killing. The third factor is fear. Fear refers to mental trepidation or an emotional reaction arising from an impending danger. It may influence human action and may cause the human action to become a non-human action because the fear is there. The action is not human action in such cases. If the fear, usually light fear, does not destroy a person's freedom but only diminishes it, then the subsequent action is voluntary in proportion to the amount of the liberty the person had. Fourth factor which may make an action not fit for human action is violence. Violence can influence the degree to which actions are human or not. It is external physical force exerted on a person. When a person offers all the resistance he or she can, actions therefore carried out of these circumstances are unfree and therefore not human action. If the person does not offer as much resistance as possible, the actions performed may be less free and so human in proportion to the resistance not exerted. Fifth factor is habit. Habits can influence the nature of the human action. It is a quality acquired through frequent repetition that enables a person to act easily and promptly. It is an inclination that is also difficult to remove. The issue is the influence of a habits on voluntariness. That a person acquires a habit reflects voluntariness. Sixth factor is temperament. Temperament may influence voluntariness. It is the sum of a person's natural habit of proportional as opposed to the character. Such as habits, temperament and character may sometimes lessen voluntariness of actions but never destroy it. Seventh and last factor is pathological states. There are many pathological states, mental states, which may interfere with voluntariness. This in turn blurs knowledge and weakens free will. Insanity, psychoneurosis, psychosis, schizophrenia, etc. may also impact the voluntariness of human action, and therefore these actions may not be called as human actions under these pathological states, and therefore that cannot be come under the ethical scrutiny. Any of these factors make an action human or not. For the study of ethical considerations, such actions therefore should not be taken under ethical consideration if any of these criteria are not fulfilled well. Now we can say actions during riots, action performed for self-defense, action performed due to extreme fear, and such other actions cannot be termed as human action for consideration of ethical study. When we'll be asked to solve any of ethical case studies during civil services examination, it is important to understand whether the given action in the case is human action or not. If it fulfills the criteria mentioned for human action, then only the action may be decided if ethical or not. Otherwise, you don't even consider that action for the human action ethical consideration. Now we have studied the relationship between the ethics and human action, which is very important for us to solve the case studies which will be asked in the civil services examination. We'll learn more such topics in our subsequent lectures. Thank you. Thanks a lot.